Larry Reed is seen gloating, shirtless, over his cellmate in prison as he writhes in pain on the ground. Texas prison officials say Reed had just beat up his cellmate and live-streamed some of it to Facebook via an illegal cell phone. Reed serving an 11-year sentence for murder when this video was taken.
This man is Larry Dwayne Reed, a convicted murderer who just got caught on camera beating his cellmate unconscious inside a Texas prison. He went live on Facebook to brag about it, using a phone he was never supposed to have. The state of Texas saw this video and did absolutely nothing. 33 months later, Reed walked out of prison a free man.
I was worried that if he did that, what else is he gonna do? Is he gonna come here for us?
And within the next 45 days, 3 other people were dead. Let's go back to the beginning so all of this makes sense. Because what happened in Arlington, Texas on the night of January 25th, 2024 was not some sudden event. Larry Dwayne Reed was born around 1995 in Arlington, Texas, a city in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. His life before the crimes is basically a blank. What we know for sure is that by the time he was 17 years old, he had already killed somebody. In June of 2012, Reed showed up to a house party on Geraldine Court in Arlington. Sometime during the night, a fight broke out. You know the kind of argument that happens at parties all the time. But Reed did not walk away. He pulled out a gun and shot 18-year-old Obeth Hernandez dead and wounded a 21-year-old who was also there. He was arrested and remanded in county jail while prosecutors built their case, and in 2014 he pleaded guilty to murder and received an 11-year sentence from Tarrant County courts. With the credit he had already built up for time served since his arrest, he was looking at roughly 9 more years inside a Texas Department of Criminal Justice facility. 9 years is a long time, especially when you go in as a teenager, and for a lot of people that age, going through prison experience changes them. That is the whole idea behind putting people in prison in the first place. But what Reed was doing inside those walls told a very different story about where his head was at, and in 2021, he put it all on camera for everyone to see. In March of that year, Reed was inside a Texas Department of Criminal Justice facility when he got into it with his cellmate and beat the man badly enough that the guy was on the floor in serious pain, unable to get up. Most people in that situation would have backed off at that point. Reed pulled out a contraband phone that he was absolutely not supposed to have, went live on Facebook, and stood over his cellmate gloating while the man suffered on the ground beneath him. He was shirtless and smiling. He wanted people to watch, and he wanted them to know he felt great about what he had just done. That video eventually made its way to WFAA, a local Dallas news station, and it became the center of a much bigger conversation about how Texas was managing the people in its prisons.
The video is from March 2021 and recently shared with WFAA. Larry Reed is seen gloating, shirtless, over his cellmate in prison as he writhes in pain on the ground. Texas prison officials say Reed had just beat up his cellmate and live-streamed some of it to Facebook via an illegal cell phone. Reed serving an 11-year sentence for murder when this video was taken. 33 months from this point in time, Reed will be a free man for just 45 days until a capital murder charge stares him in the face for a triple homicide at this apartment complex in Arlington.
Here's the part that should make you angry. Having a cell phone inside a Texas prison is a third-degree felony under state law, punishable by 2 to 10 years additional in prison. It is a serious crime with serious consequences attached to it, specifically because contraband phones inside prisons are used to do exactly the kind of things Reed was doing with his. The Texas Department of Criminal Justice opened an investigation after the video surfaced, and they sent the case over to the Office of the Inspector General, which is the government body responsible for gathering evidence and building a prosecution before passing it to lawyers who can actually file charges in court. But the Special Prosecution Unit, the part of the system that actually handles crimes committed behind bars, told reporters they never once received a case with Larry Reed's name on it. The case fell apart somewhere between the agency that investigated it and the lawyers who were supposed to do something about it, and Reed walked away from the whole thing with nothing but a slap on the wrist internally.
The ball got dropped.
Sherry Siegelin spent 17 years as a correctional officer in the Texas prison system and says having a cell phone in prison is a third-degree felony, punishable by 2 to 10 years in jail. She says the state had sufficient evidence in their hands to elongate Reed's sentence, potentially preventing those killings.
His cell phones are not something that you can just walk down to the commissary and get.
But WFAA FAA learned Monday that Reed never faced any penalty for this. A Texas Department of Criminal Justice official told our news desk Reed illegally had a cell phone, that an investigation was done and sent to the Office of Inspector General, who would build a case for the agency's Special Prosecution Unit, which tries crimes behind bars. But an official for that unit told us it never received a case involving Reed ever, signaling the investigation never made it beyond the Office of the Inspector General. Reed had a flat discharge last December. The homicides took place the following month.
Sherry Siegel spent 17 years as a correctional officer in the Texas prison system, and when this story came out, she said what a lot of people were thinking.
I don't know, I'm almost at a loss for words. To me, it just doesn't make sense. That's a black eye for the agency.
It did not make sense then, and it does not make sense now. If the phone charge alone had been prosecuted properly, Reed could have had 2 to 10 years added to the time he was already serving. That would have meant he was still sitting in a cell on January 25, 2024. Instead, on December 13, 2023, Larry Dwayne Reed walked out of prison on what is called a flat discharge, which means he had served out his sentence to completion with good behavior credits counted in. There was no parole officer waiting for him outside, no ankle monitor or required check-ins with anybody. He was 29 years old, and he went straight back to the Arlington area where he had grown up. For 45 days, things were quiet. Then, the night of January 25th arrived. Before we talk about what Reed did that night, you need to know who was in that apartment, because these were real people with real lives, and none of them had any business dying the way they did. Monique Elaine Smith Glenn was 29 years old. She was born in Fort Worth on June 29, 1994, and had grown up in a close family with her mother, Erica Gibson, and her siblings, Jasmine, Jamar, Eric, and Jeremiah. She went to Lamar High School, got a certification in phlebotomy after graduation, which is the medical skill of drawing blood from patients, and she ended up working as a caregiver at Bethesda Gardens Assisted Living in Arlington. Her coworkers there talked about her warmth and her laugh like those were the first things that came to mind when someone said her name. She was into gospel music, volleyball, cooking, and decorating her home. She was a Christian woman who took her faith seriously. She was a mother to 3 children, her son Camirian from before her marriage, her son King Jason, who she shared with her husband Jarrell, and her daughter Kamaria, who everyone called KK. In February of 2022, she married Jarrell Drayon Glenn, and from everything that people who knew her said, she had built the life she wanted and she was proud of it. Jarrell Drayon Glenn was 31 years old, born June 2, 1992. The people who loved him described him as a dedicated father and husband, someone who was present for his kids and who genuinely prioritized his family. But Jarrell also ran in circles that brought risk close to home. His social media was full of cash and luxury items, and he went by nicknames like Hood Rich and Jick, which told you something about the world he moved through outside of his family life. Back in 2019, he had been arrested on a capital murder charge connected to a shooting that happened during a recording session at an apartment in Arlington, but the charge did not result in a conviction and he went free. That kind of history carries weight as it puts a target on a person even when they are trying to live right. And by January of 2024, Jarrell and Monique were living together at the Chatham Green Village Apartments in Arlington with their kids, doing the everyday things that young families do. That evening, Jarrell had set up a haircut with Shannon O'Shea Jones. Shannon was 29 years old, a licensed mobile barber who had just received his license in October of the same year. He'd been cutting hair his whole life because he genuinely loved it. As an adult, he was known for giving free haircuts to children in the neighborhood and to families who could not afford to pay, which is why the people who knew him called him a community servant without even thinking twice about it. He had a good sense of humor, generous, and was somebody people were happy to have around. He was also a father to a 5-year-old son and a daughter who was 2 months old when he went over to the Glenn's place that January night to cut Jarrell's hair. At around 8:30 in the evening on January 25, 2024, Larry Reed forced his way into the second-floor apartment at the 3500 block of Chatham Green Lane in Arlington. Reed's reason for being there was not a vague argument or some random beef. Court documents filed by prosecutors confirmed that Reed came to that apartment specifically because Jarrell had spoken to police about Reed's 2012 murder conviction, the very case that put Reed away for 9 years. Jarrell had cooperated with detectives, and Reed had been sitting with that knowledge the entire time he was locked up. The moment he got out, he went looking for the man he believed had talked. He shot Jarrell first, and then he kept going. Monique was next, and then Shannon, a man who had absolutely nothing to do with any of it and was simply in that apartment to get a haircut. Reed left the scene right after the shooting, and a witness near the building saw someone running out shortly after the shots were fired. Arlington police got the call, showed up to the scene, and started working the case immediately. Shannon Jones was found dead right there in the doorway of the apartment, killed before he could even make it out. He never had a chance. Monique was found inside the apartment, shot in the neck. Jarrell had been hit multiple times and was still breathing when officers arrived, but by the time he was taken to the hospital, he was pronounced dead. And through all of that, the Glenn's young children were inside that apartment the whole time. Thankfully, they were not physically hurt. Officers eventually got them out and released them to family members that night.
Police found 3 adults shot to death inside of an apartment on Chatham Green Lane on January 25th. The suspect was located all the way in Greenville, Mississippi yesterday.
Investigators believe Reed and the unidentified 31-year-old victim knew each other, and high-risk drug activity may have been involved. Police say Reed continued to fire at others in the apartment. 29-year-old Monique Smith was also fatally shot. Smith's 2 children were not hurt. The third victim was 29-year-old Shannon Jones. His family says he's a mobile barber and he was just visiting the apartment.
I just don't know where to go from here.
Jones's mother says the news of the arrest was a slight sigh of relief.
I was worried that if he did that, what else is he going to do? Is he going to come here for us?
Reed has a violent criminal history. In 2014, Reed pleaded guilty to the June 2012 murder of an 18-year-old at an Arlington house party. Reed waived his right to a jury trial and was sentenced to 11 years in prison. He just finished his sentence in December.
I just feel like they slapped him on the wrist and told him, okay, go to timeout, and when timeout is over with, you just come back here. That's not working for me.
On February 2nd, 2024, Arlington police issued a capital murder warrant for Larry Dwayne Reed. The tips had come in fast. Witnesses had confirmed his face in a photo lineup, and investigators had enough to go public. The warrant described him as armed and dangerous, and because Reed had known connections to Mississippi, that is where the search went first. The U.S. Marshals Service came in to assist, working alongside Arlington police and law enforcement on the ground in Mississippi to track him down. It took 4 days.
Stephen, the Arlington Police Department tells me it received multiple tips in this investigation that connected Larry Reed to the triple murder. One of the tips helped U.S. Marshals pinpoint a home in Mississippi. Inside, Larry Reed was hiding out. 6 weeks after convicted 29-year-old Larry Reed was released from state prison, he's now accused of shooting and killing 3 people at an Arlington apartment complex. A manhunt was underway since the January 25th triple murder. Tuesday, U.S. Marshals found Reed at a home in Greenville, Mississippi.
They got a breakthrough they needed when they received a tip from a caller who pointed them in the right direction of Larry Reed.
According to an arrest warrant affidavit Fox 4 obtained on Tuesday, a witness stated Larry Reed also went by the name Crip. Arlington police wanted to protect the identity of the person who revealed Reed's location, so the majority of the witness's information was redacted. A tipster also told police Reed the 31-year-old victim who lived at the apartment. Investigators believe Reed and the unidentified 31-year-old victim knew each other, and high-risk drug activity may have been involved.
On February 6th, U.S. Marshals tracked Reed to a house in Greenville, Mississippi, and found him hiding in the attic. He surrendered without resistance and was held at the Washington County Jail while Texas processed the paperwork to bring him back.
Triple suspect is heading back to North Texas after being caught thousands of miles away in Mississippi.
He's accused of 3 people in Arlington last month, just weeks after getting out of jail for another.
Natalie Haddad is live this morning in Arlington. Okay, Natalie, what happened?
Kind of a crazy story, Kara. 29-year-old Larry Reed was only a free man for a couple of weeks by the time he was caught, arrested, and put back in jail for a triple murder that Arlington police say he is responsible for right here in the city. Now, Larry Reed is accused of murdering 3 people at an apartment complex in the 3500 block of Chatham Green Lane in late January. Police say he shot and killed 29-year-old Monique Smith, 29-year-old Shannon Jones, and an unnamed 31-year-old. Then he ran off to Mississippi. Then 12 days later, police there caught him, and now he will be extradited back to North Texas. Meanwhile, Shannon Jones's family is preparing his funeral. They say the state of Texas failed them by giving Reed a light sentence for previous crimes he committed, 11 years for murder back in 2012.
Shortly after, he was extradited to Tarrant County, where he was booked on capital murder charges and held without bond. Now, one of the most important pieces of this whole story came out in the court documents filed when prosecutors were pushing to keep Reed locked up with no chance of bail. According to those filings, Reed did not show up to that apartment just because of some general beef with Jarrell Glenn. He was taking revenge on Jarrell for snitching on him. Witnesses also told the investigators that Reed was actively making plans to find and kill the other people who had also cooperated with detectives in that earlier case. The case eventually made its way through the Tarrant County court system, and on March 6, 2026, Larry Dwayne Reed stood in a Tarrant County courtroom and pleaded guilty to capital murder. He was 31 years old. The prosecutors on the case, Assistant District Attorneys Tim Rogers and Lucas Allen, had been preparing to go to trial and seek the death penalty. Reed took the plea instead, and 3 days later, on March 9th, the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office officially announced the sentence: life in prison without any possibility of parole ever. He is never coming out. Tarrant County District Attorney Phil Sorrells released a statement thanking the Arlington Police Department for their work on the case. The families of the victims now have a verdict, more than 2 years after the night their lives were changed.
I just don't know where to go from here.
Jones's mother says the news of the arrest was a slight sigh of relief.
I was worried that if he did that, what else is he going to do? Is he going to come here for us?
Reed has a violent criminal history. In 2014, Reed pleaded guilty to the June 2012 murder of an 18-year-old at an Arlington house party. Reed waived his right to a jury trial and was sentenced to 11 years in prison. He just finished his sentence in December.
I just feel like they slapped him on the wrist and told him, okay, go to timeout, and when timeout is over with, you just come back here. That's not working for me.
The 3 people who died that night deserve to be said by name one more time, and not just as background details in someone else's criminal story. Monique Elaine Smith Glenn was a mother of 3 who spent her working days caring for elderly people at an assisted living facility, a woman her coworkers remembered first for her warmth and her laugh. Jarrell Drayon Glenn was her husband, a man who by every account from people who loved him was dedicated to his children and trying to build something real for his family. Shannon O'Shea Jones was a barber who gave free haircuts to kids in the neighborhood who could not pay, a man with a 2-month-old daughter at home who came over to do a haircut and never made it back out the door. None of them deserved what happened. The children they left behind certainly did not deserve to grow up without their parents, because a broken system handed a dangerous and vengeful man his freedom ahead of schedule and then walked away. Larry Reed is never getting out, but 3 people who should be alive are not, and the system that had every chance to stop this chose paperwork over accountability, and 3 families paid the price for it. What do you think about this case? Let me know what you think about the shooting in the comments section. Also, click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this. See you in the next one.